Hello, I'm Sensei Alex Kakuyo, regular contributor for Buddhistdoor Global, and I'd like to welcome you to this episode of The Ordinary Buddhist. The title of today's talk is Chop Wood, Carry Water. But before we get into that, I'll remind you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when I post talks in the future. Also, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that'd be great too. Layman Pang was a Chan Buddhist practitioner that lived in the 8th century. He was a wealthy merchant who later in life decided he wanted to get into spiritual practice. So much so that he built a meditation hut in the back of his home where he could study sutras and meditate in peace. Eventually, Layman Pang became worried that his material possessions would distract him from his practice, so he took all of his expensive things, loaded them into a boat, and sank them to the bottom of a deep lake. When he was asked why he did this, Layman Pang responded by saying, "I didn't want to trouble anyone else with my possessions." He then went on to travel all over China studying with other teachers, and he quickly became very popular and very well known for his deep realization of the Dharma. So much so that he was sometimes challenged by students from rival schools. Such was the case one day when a student came up to him and said, "My master can stand on one side of the river and cause magic symbols to appear on the other side. What can you do?" To this, Layman Pang simply responded, "My spiritual activity is simple. I chop wood, I carry water." Now, I enjoy this story because it really encapsulates a struggle that many of us have, not only with spiritual practice, but with daily life. We read stories of monks and nuns with miracle powers that could fly through the air and open doorways to other dimensions, and we think that if we're not experiencing this, then we must be doing something wrong. Or maybe the problem isn't our spiritual practice, but our daily life, and we think if we don't live in a big mansion or drive a fancy car, then we must be doing something wrong. But in the example of Layman Pang, we have someone who experienced very great success both in the material and the spiritual realms. So much so that we're still talking about him all these centuries later. And yet, when he was challenged to prove his realization, to prove his enlightenment, he simply stated that he could chop wood and carry water, which was the 8th century equivalent of walk the dog and wash the dishes. Something that all of us do every day. And we may not think of this as a miraculous power, but in the Buddhist sense, it is. Because in Buddhism, we're taught that everyday life is a miracle. And our ability to go through life in a calm, peaceful manner, in a way that's beneficial both for ourselves and others, whether it's chopping wood, whether it's carrying water, whether it's checking in on a loved one, is a miracle. It's worthy of note, and it's an important part of our spiritual practice. So I'd like to encourage you, anytime you feel that you're less than or that you're not doing enough, either in daily life or in spiritual practice, remind yourself of Layman Pang. Remind yourself of his example, and when in doubt, chop wood, carry water. Amitabha.